Yeah.
Ari useless.
Are we back?
We're back.
What happened there?
Are we back on Facebook?
Oh yeah, it'll be a new stream though. It won't pick up the old one.
That was the internet. I just had to go reboot the. It's fiber too, you know. Come on, people.
Oh yeah, we're back on Facebook. It's all good. Kia ora, everyone. Sorry about that.
Hello, my technical issues with our internet service provider.
Yeah.
That was a shame, Dad, because you were getting into some good stuff there. We were talking about your mates and some of the old fellas missing each other.
Yeah. I'm around that, and I think I'm starting to feel it now in my later stage of my life, and I could easily talk to fellas like Te Weiti and just have a conversation in roto I te reo, and I still do. I may bring people like Te Toka, Te Mara. So picking all the conversation, 80, 70, late 80s, 70-year-old, and having those sort of kind of conversation, and it's you start to feel it, and working on it.
Just a couple of things online before I forget is Brian Gardner, kia ora, bro. Yes, we did get your email, so we'll get back in contact with you about that ehua.
Oh yeah,
so,
yeah.
Ka pai. And Kaitiaki online, yeah, glad you're not in bed yet. That's good, stay with us. Kia ora koutou. I did have a question, Dad, because, you know, and two, you know, around utilising the reo, our tikanga kawa, for reconnection and connection and the health benefits of that. And yet, I know from experience, I know some people who are steeped in te reo, steeped in kawa and tikanga, and their knowledge of that, and suffer some really serious mental health issues. You know, so I guess I'm saying that it's not necessarily a cure-all, or maybe it's a sense of reconnection that can be the healing part. You know, I guess not to just purely play devil's advocate about it, but you know, genuinely, I know some fellas who have all of the mātauranga, and it didn't help.
Yeah. I hear that. And I mean, you can have all the reo, you can have all the mō you know, and you know, and, more important for me is the I guess the politics of things, you know, and you know, some of these guys that I know that have all of that are very colonised, you know, and you know, particularly in the 70s and 80s, because we ended up arguing with these guys, and yet these guys had the reo, they had the whakapapa, they had all of that, but they really had some really ultra fascist mentality, you know, and they support the national party mentality, well, you know, even worse than that, You know, and I think the National Party is pretty mediocre. Yeah, but then you got the real extremists. And I know some of these old buggers that I know over the years, and particularly when we were in Ngā Tamatoa, because they had a go at us. And they're trying to undermine people who don't have the reo. You know, they had tried to undermine people like Hana because he didn't have the reo. And all of that, there was a big population of people, my generation, way back in the day, didn't have the reo. And some of our fundamental, you know, real people, tikana people, yeah, that's another kaupapa altogether, but you know, I understand what Toy trying to get at, yeah, and then he's right.
Well, because, you know, for example, the mahi that Dai and Mākopo are doing, and I think maybe it's the application, the way that they are utilising it. Because I've also seen and experienced where te reo on tikanga is used as a weapon. So, you know, that certainly can take place. And so when I guess you're using te reo me ona tikanga as a therapeutic modality, as a way to, as an applied practice, rather than just like, oh, if you have the reo, then you'll be sweet. Because I think there can be a bit of a romanticization. It can be about going home too, you know. Oh, hoki ki te kāinga, you know, return to your marae and to your maunga and your awa. Truth is that the marae can be a very toxic place. There can be intergenerational trauma playing out amongst certain families, you know, those feuds that happen between whānau, you go along to a hapu hui and it's terribly toxic. And you go, actually, you know, it's not necessarily a safe place for people to go back to. I guess I'm just bringing this up because I think it's important to understand those layers and complexities within it, and not to romanticize that, you know, hey, go home and it's all, you're gonna sort yourself out, because that's not the case.
And then we then we use that you know, colonial system within even the marae. In fact, you know, honestly, I don't really know many marae that are totally independent to Turutana. And not being Christianized or anything like that, or being homogenized. So that's the reality of colonization, you know, and we just need to accept the fact that we are colonized, and so am I, you know, and because we had nearly 300 years of it, you know, so we just got to work out what is it, what is real. You know, and what is real? What is it that works for us? And the reason why we're here. Now, the reason why we're part of this conversation is really important, that we have these types of corridor around our health and around shifting and moving ourselves. And we're heading to. So we need to have all of that. Yeah, and we need to challenge each other on that. And then we should be open-minded about it. But at the moment, pity, there's some really heavy stuff happening with us right at the moment, and in particular with the vaccine and the uruta around that. And so there's a huge, I'm just astounded by some of the corridor that are out there on social media. You know, and we got people there, go down to Parliament, let's go and run the place down, let's assassinate the Prime Minister. You know, that's really dangerous stuff when we start saying those things. So
I never thought
those kind of people, my friend.
I never thought I would see the day where a Tino Rangatiratanga flag is on the same pole as a Trump flag.
Yeah.
Being waved right next to each other.
Well, it's certainly a sign of the times, huh?
It is a sign of the times. He tohu tērā. And, you know, and I saw some whānau down at Parliament, and I think it was on Instagram, or somebody was interviewing them, and they're convinced that Jacinda is part of a child trafficking ring. and that she was under house arrest, and she was arrested by President Trump when she went there last, and that she actually has a bracelet on her ankle. And these, I mean, when I was listening to them talk, they didn't seem like people that were completely, I guess, crazy. They just had picked up a narrative, because you would assume, hey, that's crazy talk. Jacinda doesn't have a bloody bracelet. She's not under house arrest by President Trump. But they have taken on the story, and they really truly believed it. And I thought, wow, that's quite amazing that people have been convinced that much by a narrative that is coming from offshore, through the media that they consume, through the social media. Sign of the times, freaky.
Yeah.
It was odd.
Yeah. So it's pretty noisy out there, pretty noisy. And I try to avoid some of this debate. And I still think that we can, we're entitled to have a different opinion. And I think we should be open-minded about that. I ke takarono I nā reke, e nā rereke e tana o te kōrero a tēnā tēnā. And respect that, and I know for years my mother hukarere, and I was just trying to get my head around it, her passion to Jesus Christ, and without undermining it, I listened to her. It's not my bus, but but it teaches me to just to sit there, sit back, in the way that our people find spirituality by allowing themselves to be indoctrinated by another faith. Hey, but I still love my mother. I still love all my kuia, all of that, despite all of those different opinions, their different beliefs. We still love them. And I think it's that's really what's missing around here. We have this different opinion, and now we can go around. If we go to the marae, everybody can, who am I talking? Am I talking to the right people? That's what's happening on the ground. So we need to find a way that we can, find another way so we're not stuck in the corner and getting pissed off.
Yeah. I think that social media has had a big impact on the way people interact with each other, and not being face to face, people tend to grow some balls. You know what I mean? And say shit that they wouldn't usually say to people if they're face to face. And we see this a lot around the kaupapa of moko and tattooing, say foreigners, for example, is a big one. And man, the Māori community can get up their heckles, and social media has a lot to do with it. And not just that, but access to all sorts of types of information coming, this, the whole Americanization of cultures. And this has been a big issue since hip hop days, I guess. And we kind of have adopted the romantic idea of American culture. Young people are picking it up left, right, and center. And they have access to it at a touch of a button, And there's all these narratives floating around the planet. It's really hard to know what's the truth out there anymore. Really, really hard. Yeah.
That's why people on here talking about mainstream media. Don't believe everything you see in mainstream media. Cause I used to satirically pull apart mainstream media. Dad, we're quite knowledgeable about media and what is, a spin, what is bullshit, what is the government trying to, use their PR firms to try to spin a certain angle, and I can see straight away when there is something dodgy about a story, when I can see lazy journalism. I can see a newsroom that is under stress because they've got to meet their deadlines and fill their column inches, and so they've got young journalists in there, and I've seen erroneous information spread across multiple media sources because reporters haven't checked their facts. You know, I've been in newsrooms and I've seen all of that, and then I see the sort of stuff, you know, the proliferation at the moment of these guys who have become, you were saying, you know, they've grown balls and they've become emboldened, bro. There's all of these new media commentators, and they get online and they talk like this, and they go, lions do not take the advice of sheep. And they speak like this, and it's a certain format that's come from Breitbart, from that crazy guy who was on, and it works. You speak with authority, you speak with a certain patter, and you can convince a certain amount of people. But you listen closely, and actually their rhetoric goes around in circles, and they'll say things like they're fact. But if you go and you do, all you got to do half the time is go and do a little bit of a Google to check the facts and compare. And
no, don't say that.
No.
That's the last thing you wanted to propagate, is that Google's the place you go to get facts.
What I'm saying is, you don't go straight to YouTube. You do have to go to cross-check to see whether information has a certain amount of credibility. You go, has that information, if I Google it, does it show up in other sort of spaces? But yeah, I get what you mean. It sort of sounds like me going, go do your research, do your own research.
Yeah.
And that's not what I mean.
And I know that you're not. That's not what you're saying. But do you think that's, you know, because right now what we're seeing is the disenfranchised coming and finding finding a new way of connecting with the distrust and the cynicism that they have, right? And so what you have is not just culturally, but now that's kind of bleeding out into cross-cultural, and which is where you're starting to see that intermingling of fucking Trump and the Tino Rangatiratanga flag all together, because it is that. So my question is, do we think that Māori are more susceptible to these forms of things now because of the colonization and the disenfranchised aspect of it, of being subjected to a structure that has created distrust?
Totally.
And so now it's all the stuff that's coming out and it's like, nah, we're not into it, and we're going to push against it because they don't have the issue of, you know, it's COVID today. Back in Dad's day, where did Dad go? You know, it was actually real racism, and it was that bias, and it was that institutional stuff going on there.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh yeah, we've got COVID. That's our cause.
I mean, people think that, like, you would call the media the fourth estate, because media has traditionally held a lot of governments to account. It has been an essential part of the democracy where they have held certain governments and their choices to account. They ask hard questions, and I think that still goes on, but because you've had this other element, which is called alternative media, come in and be completely like outside of the realms, they don't have the obligation to verify their sources, to verify, and they loop in terms of their sources. They go, oh, because I heard it from here and I heard it from here, and it's very difficult to assess, like the bro was saying before, what is true and what is not. What is the credibility of the information that you're getting? And like you were saying, bro, especially because we're skeptical of mainstream media, because in the past there has been institutionalized racism. Even though they're being the fourth estate and they're kind of holding government to account, it's still within the framework of the West and the colonized sort of framework, and so there was still a lot of fuckery in there, you know, and so we're right to be, there's a lot of propaganda in there.
Yeah, propaganda.
But some of the crazy stuff that is coming out that people are believing is just not helpful at all.
How do you feel about this corridor going into your skin there, Alicia?
Aroha mai.
She's agreeing with the corridor.
Probably not quite what you were expecting to happen when you came into the studio tonight.
No, but it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you know, people's general distrust of the media and the government kind of go hand in hand. A lot of people who are on that side of the fence think that the media is just owned by the government, and you know, in a lot of cases that's probably true. And so therefore the narrative just really seems to be controlled on that whole side of things. I'm probably one to agree with that myself. That you know, over here you got Rupert Murdoch, right?
Yeah.
Who owns
Yeah.
pretty much
Oh, he's the
pretty much media
ultimate
world.
of fascism.
And he's a racist motherfucker, right?
Oh, yeah.
and these guys have power, man, and they have power to control.
Yeah, to manipulate.
And a lot of people understanding that now.
Yeah.
You know, the media is a controlled thing, and so I think a lot of people are starting to look outside of that because they, like myself, I kind of think like, okay, we've come 300 years into the Treaty of Waitangi. We're still trying to get these guys to live up to their side of the deal. It's like being married to a compulsive liar. You know what I'm saying? And I'm pretty sure a lot of Māori people feel that. So it's a tough one to navigate, and it's one I think for people that just had enough, you know, of the bullshit and the lies and the controls and all of that kind of stuff. Not just Māori either. It's both sides.
Aye.
I like what you're saying there about actually the reality of if you're on the pie and you're saying shit, you have to you're fronting up and you're saying it to people who will like call you on it face to face, you know. And so that whole process where it gets you out from behind your keyboard and gets you to, you know, stand behind your words is quite a different thing, you know.
Totally, it holds you accountable, right, to what you say.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are just not doing that these days because they're hiding behind a keyboard.
I mean, in terms of, what this thing has become with Dad, you know, and him kind of telling his stories and talking to people, having us on it, you know, there's that. I guess this is the version of this space, you know, because in terms of what we're trying to create here, in terms of having the corridor and just, you know, we're having to talk to people in the comments, right? People are here, they're standing, they're looking in their comments, and you know, we're able to put ourselves out on the line a little bit in terms of our views, and so there's that, you know. So this comes like a bit of a digital pie in that sense, I guess.
Yeah. No, totally.
I know. Me and Toya had these discussions before around the whole Trump thing and stuff. You know, we both sat on different sides of the fence, but we didn't start calling each other's names.
We did. I remember that now. I'd forgotten, but actually I do remember that now. We did have some we had some Facebook commentary tete-a-tete where we went backwards and forwards. But actually, you know, I think the difference was, bro, is that we genuinely were trying to have a conversation and a corridor, and understand that, hey, we see things a little bit differently on certain subjects, and I think maybe that might be that you look at things case by case as well, you know, rather than these generalizations of da 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 da. I sort of look at every sort of piece of information, and I do genuinely try to dissect it and go, is that credible? Is that not credible? Actually, these things are really complex, and sort of buying into a narrative, a political narrative, might be a mistake here. Because I was hearing what you were saying, bro. Since I started in the media 20 years ago, it's changed. Newsrooms have come under pressure. They are commercial operations, and they have been bought and they have been sold, and they try to keep a sense of credibility. I remember sitting in a room with a bunch of journalists for that show Media Take, and they were bemoaning the demise of their profession. They were saying, you know, journalism is so bad these days, you're under so much pressure, and the good old days of journalism. I was going, are you guys kidding? The newspapers in New Zealand have been terrible to Māori over the century, you know, since you guys came here. Like, come on now. There is no objectivity, because they like to think of themselves as purely objective, and it's like, it is subjective to your culture, and you.
Yeah.
So that's the history of it, but that was their own. That's the institutionalized racism. That's their cultural bias that is playing out,
Yeah.
rather than them, knowing the truth and purposefully trying to hide it. There's a big difference between those two places.
Yeah.
And knowing the difference of they didn't land on the moon. We know they didn't land on the moon, but we're going to put that out. I think there are people who generally are like that, who will know the real truth, and it's their job, and they get paid to spin it in the favor of their client. That absolutely does happen out there. So like I'm saying, it's a case-by-case basis, I think, when you're trying to assess information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too that a lot of people kind of can underplay the role of America on the global scene. Man, they are everywhere and in everything, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
They got their fingers into everything. I mean, now they've got NASA.
They're the real virus.
They are. I mean, politically, yeah. Militarily, yeah.
Dad, do you? Oh, sorry, bro.
What's that?
No, I don't know. It's Dad, do your because it fucking when you kind of lay it all out like that, and you start to kind of see all the threads. It feels really complicated. I'm just thinking about the simpler time for you guys. Back in the day, does it feel more complex now than it's?
No,
It's such a blurring of the lines now. Here we can't tell the difference between tino rangatiratanga, Māori movement, anti-vax, housewives of Remuera. It's all starting to blend into itself at the moment, and I can't figure shit out. And I want to just go back to clean old Muldoon racism. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Well, even in the political movement of socialism, was really quite complex. So you got the Soviet Union ones, you got the Chinese one, you got the Albanian one, and so you had these different factions of socialist movement, of the New Zealand Communist Party, Socialist Action, all of those different groups. It gets quite confusing, even back in our days. Yeah, and so you got the Socialist Action, you got the other socialist group. They want to dominate the trade union movements, and so they think that there need to be a movement within the unions. And that's when Muldoon came in. Muldoon was the one who came in and undermined all of that. And he was the one that introduced the policies around strikes and undermined the unions altogether. He stuffed that up, and he was very good at it. And that's really in true terms, there's no trade union. We don't have a voice at all for workers. So, and in particularly when you got a lot of people within Māori organisation, like the Kohanga Reo, there are issues of people working within in those organisations, and a Māori organisation, they're not really getting a voice, and they're getting booted out. And so people like Ken Mea and Sir Jackson was the one who created a movement within the trade union movement, because they didn't really trust the officials, because they're pretty a sellout. And so not only are you trying to deal with the government, but we are trying to deal with the bureaucrats within an organisation supposed to be speaking on our behalf. And so we had all of those issues. It's quite more complex as what it is today. But at least we made a move. We had those conversations and challenged each other around those things. Yeah, and so the movement like Ngā Tamotua comes through from within the trade union movements. Now you don't really have that at all, and even when I was working for the Haura, I was trying to get all the guys, all the practitioners to join a union, and because we didn't have any You think you're safe there working for a Māori organisation? Think about it. They're very much like everybody else there too. So, but I think it's really important that in Māori organisation, Hauoratana, all of the different Māori organisations, that there need to be a place there to support the workers, the people that are working in those places. Yeah.
Some deep kōrero tonight. I just want to quickly just hit the comments real quick. Kia ora, LSRW. Kia ora for the sub and the gifted sub over there on Twitch.
I've just realised that Kaitiaki Online, that is our cousin Kellyanne over in Texas.
Oh yeah, she's been talking there. She's been. We haven't been ignoring you in the comments, Fano. We have been kind of keeping an eye on it, but you know, in order to sound like we kind of know what we're talking about, we have to kind of focus on the brain, yeah, so that we don't get too. But I just have been kind of in there keeping an eye on things. And generally, you know, everyone's got a lot to say about sort of the stuff that we've been talking about. And
except for Axiom, he's like, ideal socialism is sounding a lot better than late stage capitalism. He says it a lot. Yeah. He wants to make it his new command.
Yeah.
I vote yes. You know,
for me, socialism, democracy, all of these political ideologies, I think that they can all work. But it just depends who's running the show at the end of the day. Yeah. You know what I mean? You can have a tyrant running the show, or you can have someone who's serving people. Yeah. And whether they're doing it under socialism or democracy, both can be very destructive, or both can probably be very productive.
Totally.
Yeah, well, it's a language thing too. It's a new language. You bring a new language into your community. When we first started talking about the working class, decapitalists by Marx and all around it, it's a whole new language. And and how do you bring those language into our conversation? So when I think about socialism, I'm talking about whakawhanaunatana, mahitai, whakapiritana, and so there's a language. Bringing those things, rather than in the dialectics, in another conversation, how a lot of the comrades talk about. And so, taking the idea, and because we talked about the overthrow of the system, we talked about that back in, that was a language, that was a kōrero we had back in the days in the 70s, the 60s and the 70s, overthrow of the system, overthrow of the capitalist system, what do you replace that with? And so we talked about the idea of socialism. The Communist Party is just a movement, to bring about order in under a socialist system. Yeah, that kind of kōrero. So we tried to bring all of that there during our time working in an industry, because most of our people are working out there and having those kōrero.
I remember having a discussion with you a few years ago, Tommy, about how traditional Māori society was based on a form of communism. If you're going to take it to that political sort of ideology, where, like you were saying, it was a shared existence. It wasn't something that was you didn't live in society and live for yourself. You lived for everybody. And I also think that in our modern day and age, there's too much corporate lobbying going on. For me, that's just bribery. And all these corporations that are lobbying politicians, and that's where the real power is lying, right?
Totally.
Right there.
Totally.
These corporations are the ones making the laws, really, by bribery. Or they call it lobbying. That's how I see it anyway.
Unless you're in China.
I'm waiting for Axiom to hit that keyboard right about now, because he'll be all in for that.
I think if you're in China, it's the other way around, isn't it? The government tells you what the go is. Nowhere in the world is it's where a government can say, hey, and then suddenly all of the business sector just is in line. So that's the difference between the East and the West, I guess. I was saying we were in a meeting because, hey, let me do some local government stuff here.
Toy does local government.
bring the cheer to the stream, and because we're in a situation at the moment where we're supposed to be champions of local democracy, and I think democracy is quite a spectrum. You know, there isn't just it's quite a spectrum sort of thing. It's not all the same, and so we're supposed to be champions of local democracy, and we're supposed to build treaty partnerships. And I made the comment that I think we're making an assumption that Māoris are into democracy, because none of the people who signed the treaty were democratically elected representatives. Of course, they, you know, just like now, made the room go really quiet. all my fellow Pākehā colleagues and councillors were like...
sorry, I was trying to speak, but I think I was on mute. No.
They were like, where's he going with this? And
bring it home.
Well, what it is you've got a clash of cultures. So the reality is that Māoris, like Tu was saying, we weren't democratic. It was a different form maybe, but it was more socialism than what we would think of as kind of, you know, non-socialism. If you want to put it in the paradigm of the left and the right, and how do we actually bring that together in local government? Because we're actually having constitutional conversations at the moment. If, for example, Māori iwi are to take on more regulatory functions off the council in terms of managing the resources like water and the river and these sorts of things, and councils start to hand over those regulatory functions to iwi, how's that going to work? Because as a local council governance place, we got to go back. I've got to go out in a year's time and seek my social mandate to represent. That's not necessarily the case in the iwi space. How's that going to work? You know.
What's your question though? So you're saying how's that going to work, given that that's the reality?
Given that that is the reality, that we're supposed to be champions of local democracy, and yet we're supposed to also build these treaty partnerships with what are essentially iwi authorities that are just they're actually just common trusts with this kind of structure, and I guess my comment is that post-settlement, we've gone through, we've gotten the apology from the Crown, we're now post-settlement. Well, how do we organise ourselves?
Yeah, well, I think that even that's where we end up to, in the thing with that about politics, and it's where we're all part and parcel of this system. They need to be smashed, and we need to deal with it. So at the moment, all Māori organisations, they do follow their capitalist system. It's fundamentally run that way, and so it's not a socialist. I think that we need to find a way more independent. It's a voice. It's a real voice. So at the moment, we adopted the very colonial capitalist system that they function on that, and right around the mutu is like that. So it's a political view that we need to talk about it. We need to find a way that can work for all of us. And so at the moment, and whether it's two or two wharetua, very much a capitalist system. And we need to put that aside and find another way. Well, we need to have a conversation around it.
I don't know. I don't know about that. For me, it's like, because what we're saying here is, on one hand, is that there is, I think what you're saying, Dad, is that we need to smash the capitalist system. I think that's what Axiom's saying, and that is kind of the root of all evil, and that's the cause of it, right? Okay. Well, so
the mentality is the conversation. The ideology is no good.
Yeah. Okay. I do agree with that, and I do think that actually the idea of socialism is created from a capitalist point of view. So it's very difficult for us to say that maybe some of the Māori constructs have similarities to socialism more so than capitalism. Is that what you were kind of saying? More or less, wasn't it?
I'm more like sharing the wealth, create the wealth for the mass.
Sure.
You know, and I'm talking about creating the wealth that benefit everybody.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
you know,
Māori
we're in a
definitely
situation
work
now
more
where-
in a horizontal sort of way, and then a traditional vertical way, which is what is the kind of the Pākehā construct. They work in that hierarchy where everything is vertical.
But here's the reality too, and when we say share the wealth, I think back in the day, if you were a weak link and you weren't bringing value and it was a matter of survival, I don't know, but I think there was a certain sort of intolerance about that. You would fall off, if you know what I mean. I think it was a bit more brutal. These days, well, you can't just, if somebody is a burden and aren't pulling their weight, you're not just going to, you know, knock them off basically or leave them behind. I think back in the day there was the reality of survival because, well, we were more in touch with nature. And when you look at nature, it's kind of like that, you know. But these days we've got these inside of our, you know, the culture that we live in today, it's not acceptable. You know,
dog eat dog society.
Well, is it though? Because, you know, we give social welfare. We've got a safety net. You know, we know people who struggle to live in our disconnected, spread out sort of society, and they do get it's not a universal sort of wage, but it is a benefit of some sort in this particular country.
That's what I mean by that. We need to share the wealth. And then justifiably that people should get that. I mean, we pay tax, and so we need to have something more sustainable that we can implement some thought. You know, I mean, all I'm just saying, we should have this conversation and find a way, rather than EV stuff. I'm sick of it. I can't handle it. Bullshit. You know,
another discussion we had was around with me and Troy one time was around there's this thing called a resource-based economy, and there's some pretty good ideas floating around the planet, you know, with the idea of resource-based economy. Yeah. I mean, and it's going to be a huge task to implement something like that. But I know in South Africa there's one called the Ubuntu movement, and you know, it's getting so the ideals. Situation would be to get rid of money altogether, get rid of barter and trade. Everybody contributes some of their time of the week, say 5 hours of your week, to the development of community in whatever format you like to serve it. But everything's free. So if you've got 10,000 men in your community giving 5 hours a week to the development of roads or whatever you need to done in the community, that's 50,000 man hours a week, right? How many councils can offer that right now?
Yeah.
You know, there's ideas floating around the planet that can be looked at. The problem is, will white guy move over and let us do it?
and they won't, my bro. I tell you right now, I sit at certain tables and they're not going to move aside. They're not going to And so what do you move to armed revolution to force them to? Well, truth is they've probably got more guns and more resources.
Good. I'm going to have to head the the headlines off here, which is the new revolution. You don't think that there is a I don't know. I'm trying to decide whether I agree with you or not in terms of will they ever, maybe the system won't let you do it, but I feel like the people, that the system has been designed in a way that self-perpetuates. Yep, and that's...
I think the system, like when you look at the market, for example, it just, you know, is there market manipulation? Of course there is, but also the market does what the market does. I kind of think like, for example, you know, look, let me just ramble a little bit. We were in Hapu because it was a matter of necessity. You know, there were external and internal factors that made us bind together. That isn't the case anymore. You can have your IRD number, you can have your own wage, your own house, your own internet, your own sort of, you don't need necessarily the hapu. You might in some sort of romantic sense, but it's not a necessity for your survival. It's the same with the market. The market is driven through people going to a place out of, if you look at the cryptocurrency market too, the meme coins, it's like people have actually created it. I'm like, if we can talk about these theories and go, yes, of course, in theory, these are ideal things, but if you look at where the people and the money goes, how are you going to change that? Do you try to influence that amount of people so that they are supposed to do the right thing? That's kind of like what our tribe's trying to do at the moment. They know in theory that it would be best if we went back to nature and that we did these things, but I'm skeptical that people are actually going to do it, because they've got the choice between going to McDonald's when lockdowns finish and there's huge queues going around the corner, and I think I did a meme once. It was like, mana mo te haka here, you're with your girlfriend and you're walking along, and then McDonald's is walking the other way, and there's Māoridom looking over towards McDonald's. and that's the reality. Like, that's,
I feel you, cut.
and so that's what you have to fight. Is like most of our population, even the real tino rangatiratanga ones, are addicted to McDonald's and K-Fry, which is completely held up by the exact system which they say they hate.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Contradiction.
Burn the law down.
And your own people will go, why the hell did you do that? I'm now feeding for my McDonald's. Maybe you make some art. I think that's traditionally what we've done. We've made art to deal with the contradictions of our realities.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people go to those places because it's cheap. It's cheap to eat.
Sure.
You want to buy organic food, it costs you a fucking arm and a leg. It's not cheap.
Actually, this is my question to you too. Within our pūrākau, within our kōrero and our ātua, is there that kōrero right there? If you look at the debate around te wehinga, when all of the tamariki were talking about should we separate our parents or should we not separate our parents, and there were two sides to that, and there was contradictions, and there was pros and cons on both sides, and even when it did happen, there was a huge amount of fallout and conflict that happened. So quite often I think we're trying to look for this ideal, but when you look at nature and when you look at our pūrākau, that ideal doesn't actually exist.
Yeah. Never existed. Can't hear you, bro.
Hang on, Dad. We can't hear you.
I think is his mic battery died.
Oh, might have. Hang on, I'll swap over.
Yep.
Checking 1 2.
Yeah, we got you.
That's why I'm a great believer in the ancient stories. It's going back to those ancient stories, because those are the guidelines between what happened to the children of Rani and Papa, because that's where our cover come from. Because they open up a conversation, and when one of them reached out to the armpit and saw light, and they said, wow, look at that, and so he took their kōrero back to the partner, to the brothers and sisters, and say, we need to find a way to get out of this situation, away from mum and dad. So there's a whole conversation around that, because when you go back to those ancient stories, that's why we need to look at ourselves, and look at ourselves there. Then, how do we use that kōrero, of that ancient kōrero, to where we are at now at this stage? And I think it fit in there. So we need to have those sort of types of conversation.
Because we don't stop. We, even in those old stories, we still strive towards the Almarama.
Oh yeah, totally. Because that's really what they were talking about. The whai ao ki te ao marama. They come out of darkness.
Because I know in that side of that story too, I heard, I think it was actually Mark Kopu was saying that was it or was one of the older ones who had a lot of mana amongst them, said, "Stop looking at the light. Don't look at the light. That's just a distraction. Your mahi is here." But they they got obsessed with this light and looking at it.
Yeah, that's right.
And I sort of feel like, you know, this conversation that we're having, this kōrero, is sort of, it feels like those kōrero that they had then.
Yeah, for sure.
What happened to our audience? I can't see them.
Let me have a look. They're there, Dad. Let me just fix that screen up for you.
Oh, you just popped over the screensaver.
Oh, 0258.
Because even you over there in Brizzy, bro, over in Australia, in Australia, doing your mahi Māori, and you know, our people were, you know, somebody was talking about it the other day about, you know, why do we not have used the old uhi and older methods, and I'm like, because our people were adaptive, and we were travelers, and we moved, and we utilized technology, and and I was saying that it's always that trauma of colonization that we sort of lock ourselves into this, you know, we're always trying to get back to what we feel like we lost. It's that evolution dilution kōrero, my bro.
Yes.
It's the same thing. And to see you over there and you practicing your art form and having a kōrero to you tonight, which I've really appreciated, bro.
Look at that. No leaves.
Oh, what? What? You know, and I, of course, that's like, why would you not, as the technology becomes available? And our people were like that. We weren't kind of held back by, we go, oh, that's a good way of doing it. That's going to make that job easier. And we did that. And you doing it over there, because, you know, some people might be like, oh, he's over there doing that and he's not back home on the marae doing it. I'm like, and actually having a talk to you, bro, is like your tūturu as and your whakaaro and the way and the mahi that you're doing for all of our whānau that are over there in Australia.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, bro, I've always...
Go ahead.
Always kind of felt like that here is, you know, it really does serve the community, and it's become a bridge for a lot of people, you know. A lot of second, third, fourth generation Māori over here, no clue who they are, man. And for a lot of them, moko, things like moko, like what we do here, for this, my other bro runs Maurako, there's Kapahaka, really good ones too around, you know. So the Māori community here are starting to flourish. And like you say, our people have migrated for thousands of years. And the latest migration, the latest leg of that migration has been here in Australia. There's shitloads of us, heaps of us. There's not many moko artists around that way. But that kind of works for me very well. But yeah,
capitalist.
You know, but it does, and a lot of people that I end up tattooing will actually go and learn the reo, or they'll move home, you know, because they get that bridge, they get that connection to their identity and something that they have been missing for a long time. There's a lot of people in the world that have their identity sort of crisis going on. And as one who's, you know, moved over to here as a child, my parents moved us over when I was 8. I can totally relate to that loss of identity with the marae and the reo and all of that kind of stuff. I walked that path as well. And then coming home for high school, I decided to move back to Pakistani for high school. Really set the trajectory for my journey from there on out in terms of delving into the reo, the arts, bone carving, wood carving, moko. That's the power of the art form, you know, the ability to connect people back to the roots.
Do you think that Māori also suffer from that romanticism? I mean, I think that's actually exactly what you were saying before, bro. Toy, which was, you know, that romanticism of the old ways, or the mysticism, and I do like it's difficult to not sort of comment on it as the young blood Tangaroa who's in our comments, and some of the stuff that the bro kind of drops into our chats, which which I feel like he's an Aussie, and he's a young blood, and he's kind of trying to find his way, and I think there is some stuff. There was like I know he was one of the ones who asked the questions earlier on about how do you make your traditional moko heads, and there's a certain assumption there about sort of how you might be, what you might be rolling with in terms of equipment, and how you might do your stuff, and then but then there's also sort of ideas around whakapapa, meaning leadership, and things like that, so
I am actually over the last couple of years before COVID started, I've been going back and forth to Hawaii, because my bro over there, he's a traditional Hawaiian tattooist, and him and his boys have been teaching me how to make tools.
Oh yeah.
I've got a set sitting right over there that I will eventually. He's just given me kind of the blessing to get started on the actual tapping on it. So it is something that I will venture into in the very near future, bringing back the traditional tools, especially around the facial stuff, because the difference between moko of our tupuna and the moko of today is the scarification process.
Yeah.
Totally.
That's the only part of it that's really missing. And that's what set us apart from Polynesia. We were the only ones in Polynesia that really did it. I know that they found some flat chisels in Hawaii, so they may have done a little bit of it there. But there's only a handful of people who are really bringing back the traditional tools. I know that if you know moko. Moko from Auckland, the theme. He's doing some beautiful work.
Is there anyone doing the scarification part where it just leaves the dent? Because the amazing thing was what they made it out of, instead of it healing and leaving, like some of our African cousins, it's a raised scarification. It's a raised scarification. Ours actually indented, didn't it?
Yeah, scarification.
A process of recutting until it trains the skin, not the peel.
Yeah, there is a colour.
Basically. It was a long process. It's all about the process, right? Not about the outcome.
Yeah.
It's about the ritual. Yeah.
Is my mic working?
Yeah.
And that's something that we need to get back to. The moko problems that are happening around the motu are really starting to build a gap on it.
Oh yeah.
Where the tribe are coming together and people are getting their faces done. That's really becoming an initiation process. Something that's sorely needed amongst us.
Well, you fellas, it's 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Oh, we already?
Yeah,
there was 2 hours.
It didn't feel like it,
well,
but that's how good the corridor was. So.
Rolling.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Alicia, you've still got another 4 hours left on the table.
Be here for a little bit.
Kawhai.
Yeah, bro, that was awesome having you on tonight. It'd be great to get you on again. It's great just to have you here and just chill and.
Yeah, I enjoyed today too. It's awesome.
Watch you while you work. It's been mean.
Yeah, so we're getting there.
Yeah, thank you, my bro. Thank you for that, and we'll hope to see you sometimes, and see you back here online again, and share some thoughts and whakaaro. So thank you, kia ora.
I'll go through all the comments later on and see what everybody.
Yeah, I do that too.
Yeah.
Strong you.
No, for sure, man. Hey, thank you to everyone out there. So Facebook, Twitch, possibly some YouTubers out there. I'm not sure. I'm not kind of keeping an eye on that at the moment, but we are on YouTube. Just a reminder is it Tuesday or Wednesday?
Wednesday.
No, tomorrow's the last day for auction 1 on the website, so go check it out. I think we've had a couple of bids while we've been in here, so that's
okay.
Good.
Cool.
And we will open auction 2 on the Friday and start that one. I know everyone wants us to stay on for another 20 minutes, but we've got to go get a kai. Got to make sure
I really enjoyed tonight.
Blood sugar levels are up.
That was great. Thanks, Stu.
Yeah.
Choice catching up, my
Awesome,
bro.
bro.
Beautiful, my brother. Choice catching up. And thank you everybody for tuning in.